run shortly. So apologies for the start, but we'll get going. And before we officially get into it, I'd like to ask Mr. David to ask God's blessing on today's activity. So I'll stand.
Symposium, Lord, we pray by your Spirit, Lord, that you will have your way in a very special way. We thank you for every club present here this morning, Father. Pray by your Spirit, Lord, that what's going to be done and seen here, Lord, will be enhanced football, the development of football in our nation, Father. Pray for the facilitators, Lord, that they will be able to share what the knowledge, Lord, and that be able to receive, Lord, and be able to be a good for us. Once again, we want to thank you for your goodness. Lord, have your way. Lord, other than my prayer. Jesus, the Lord.
Thank you. So we're here today, as you know, to discuss the pathway to professional football. It's always our aim to empower our presidents and the extension, senior members, clubs, players, to remain relevant, to understand the ever so changing sporting discipline which we in, which is football. And gone are the days where football was just recreational. Right now, as you can attest to, it's more business than actual business itself. And today we have some esteemed gentlemen who will be introduced to you shortly by our president. And they will give you the background, the area of expertise, and you'll be given the opportunity to ask as many questions as you could and try them to see how best they could fit into our present situation and culture. So we want to welcome everyone again. I'm sure that today, the next few hours will be a great one, interactive one, and at the end of the day, we'll be able to take something back to our clubs and make it better than it was yesterday. At this time, I'd like to invite our president, Mr. Glean, to give some welcome remarks and to introduce our speakers. Mr. Glean.
Thank you, Mr. General Secretary. Good morning. Good morning. And first of all, I want to thank you for taking your Saturday again to give to the Greater Football Association. It's always good to have you guys in a room to discuss football and the business of football. You know, over the last couple of months, I've said to you that what we're trying to do is to get the clubs more involved in the association and bring you as much resources as possible. And a lot of times when you're here, we discuss the strict football. We discuss, you know, competitions, we discuss national teams, etc. But not too often we actually discuss the business of football. So we wanted to take this opportunity to have you enlightened, give you more knowledge and understanding as to how the actual business of football works. So we've invited some special guests, individuals who've operated at the highest level in terms of business of football in the world. Some of them, we have two agents, player agents that have transferred a number of players, some of you all may know. First of all, we have with us, you know, Eric Walters. Eric is, while he grew up in the UK, Eric's background is from Barbados and Jamaica. But Eric over the years have done a lot of transfers, including, you know, presently we have two players up on our own national team that Eric manages. And then there was another two players that played for Jamaica that Eric manages. Caden Harr, for example, that plays for Grenada, is a client of Eric. But also, some of y'all may know Bobby Reed, number 10 that plays for Jamaica, is another client of Eric. And Eric has been doing a lot of business. And some some of you might have seen us having conversations with clubs in the UK. Some of them, well, because of Eric's contact and relationship with some of these clubs in the UK, where we're trying to do partnerships, etc. So Eric is going to explain and discuss as to how we get a player from, Montreal at 13, 14. What do a coach or a club look for? What does he look for if he's going to partner or manage a particular player? So that we're clear, we understand as to what we're working with here. Too many times, we put the team on the field, we win, we lose, somebody wins the championship, and that's the end of it until next year. But how do we provide this proper structure that can carry players from under 13 all the way up to playing professional football somewhere in the world? And then we also have another esteemed agent, Gary Miller. And Gary Miller has been in the business forever. A matter of fact, our own technical director, Gifton Williams, Gary used to be his agent a long time ago when he played at Watford, and when he traveled, Gary brought him, to Israel and other countries around the world playing professional football. Gary's been responsible for a lot of players, especially a lot of American players we see in the Premier League, etc. He's been responsible for transferring them from the US into the England setup, including the English Premier League. So both of these guys, both Eric and Gary, is going to speak to you about the actual player and moving of players and managing players, etc. And then we have another gentleman with us, Mr. Nick Phillips. And what Nick has been doing is the actual business side of the football. So he's been doing a lot of mergers, takeovers in terms of clubs, bringing investors from the US to buy clubs. And I'm sure in the news you've been hearing about a lot of Americans are now buying clubs in the UK. A lot of Americans are buying clubs in Scandinavia, in Norway, and in Belgium and these places. He's been the one who's been brokering a lot of deals for investors to take over clubs around the world. If you look recently in Jamaica, the top club in Jamaica today, Pleasant, has been taken over, has been bought by an entity from the UK. And that is no stranger to the Caribbean. We see now investors are coming to the Caribbean to purchase clubs and help grow them and groom them so that they can in turn get these players and get them abroad. So there's the possibility exists for us here. Can we have, a thriving Paradise or a St. David's FC, for example, being bought by someone from Asia or someone from the United States, and then later on investing and building this club into a club that provides players through Europe and the rest of the world. So we're going to have an interactive session today. You can ask all the questions you would ever imagine about the business of football. I'm certain that these guys will be able to answer you in some way or form. And then finally we have, Mr. Brent Sancho, who's no stranger to Grenada. Brent played in the World Cup for Trinidad and Tobago. He also played professional football. And he was the former Minister of Sports in Trinidad and Tobago. Brent has a wealth of experience and connection. He's on FIFA committees, he's on CONCACAF committees, and he has a lot of experience, not just from the FIFA CONCACAF side and the world football side, but also Caribbean football. Because Brent is also the president of the professional league, or the CEO of the professional league in Trinidad and Tobago. And also was a club owner, so just like you guys, he was a club owner in Trinidad and Tobago in the professional league. So he'll be able to be that medium between, what happens outside in Europe and the rest of the world to what happens in the Caribbean, which we have personal experiences with and he will have personal experiences with, to help bridge the gap between and help also drive the conversation as to how do we, provide good opportunities, good club structures, etc., so that we can get our players playing at the biggest markets around the world. So I want to thank you gentlemen for coming, for taking the opportunity to come, to have that conversation with us, and I'm looking forward to some good conversation and deliberations. Thank you.
hand over to our chair for today, Mr. Bernard Sancho, close friend of the association, and he will take us through this morning's proceedings. Mr. Bernard Sancho.
Morning again, everyone. Thank you, Mr. President, for the introduction. Special welcome to the members of the head table and our guests here. I use the word our guests because I consider myself really here. So welcome to the island. To see some of it, and of course to start the conversation as it relates to the professional park. First and foremost, this is very interactive, so I want to make sure that you guys, because to get this sort of opportunity, to get these minds around the table and take it, because that's a big part of obviously being able to gain yourself with the knowledge required for club ownership, and of course trying to get players outside our shows, which is obviously one of the main things. So it's a very simple process. You know, I have questions as well. I'm sure the president will have questions. Anybody have a question, just raise a hand, and of course our partners here will go in and discuss. What I would do now, just for the purpose of clarification, is just to ask each member from the panel to give a brief introduction as to what they do from a daily perspective and of course a career perspective as it relates to them. We'll start with Eric at the far side of the table, just to give a brief introduction to the club.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Primarily, I think, having looked at my career as a football agent and ex-player, I look at the growth of football from a very early age. We have to set the foundations for young gentlemen to come into the game. We have to set the foundation for young gentlemen to come into the game, well, girls as well now, obviously, because I'm old school, very old individual. And they come into the game because they love this game. We have to give them the foundation to develop. And that development depends on the infrastructure that's around you. Now, to develop as an individual football player, you need to love the game, you need to enjoy what you're doing, but you also need to get information coming from the coaches that coach you. Now this is where you gentlemen come into the game, because you have to get those coaches right so that you can convey the message to the young players who want to be players on the field. Now how do you do that? It's a difficult situation because you cannot really find the one man that fits all player. That's a very difficult situation. But when you do find them, you have to get them to coach the boys so the boys understand the language of the coach. And different coaches will give different views on one player. How do you find the boys that's going to come through the system for you? The club. The club itself has to have an ethos as to how you're going to coach these boys to get them to the level, to help your club, and subsequently help the country. Because if they come through the system of the national teams, eventually we'll get to the very top. And then you'll find that the growth of football within the country will grow. For other people outside to come and have a look and say, well, you know what, this is a factory. Now they start with the raw material, they polish it a bit, they get to their national team, we can come and take those players, polish it better, and there's money in it for the people lower down. Now that money will take time to come, but the individuals within the game will enjoy their career and it will grow, and the next generation will look at them and see the pathway. For me, I think that's the way that Grenadian football will grow. It's going to take time, it's going to take investment, but I think it will grow like that, because that's very similar to how a football agent does his job. He sees a young lad at an early age, he follows him, he keeps an eye on his progress. You look at his progress, and sometimes you pick them up when they're 15, 14, 15, and you give them little bits of advice. You know, you don't interact with his coach and him and try and give him advice on how to play football. Sometimes it's just a moral thing. You need to give him, you know, go to bed early, eat the right food, live the game, watch players who play similarly to you. And what you do is then you disseminate the bits that are good for you and the bits that are not good for you. If you're good at one particular thing, you improve on it. if you're not good at one thing, you practice until you are good. And all the little things will come through the clubs initially, I believe, and eventually it will get to the National Association, where they will give you the hand to help you, as club owners who are investing your money and your time, to actually make money through the players that are coming through your system. Now, I don't really understand how you guys, want to take your individual clubs forward, but that's the way I see you doing that for your club, for the benefit of your club initially, which will benefit the country eventually.
So thank you, Eric, for your comments. On this slide, of course, if you could give an idea as to, of course, the type of investments that are happening currently in football, of course, the type of investments that could possibly happen here in the Caribbean, as of course you have your finger on the pulse as to what is happening currently.
Yeah, sure. Morning, everyone. So I'm a corporate lawyer by training, so I specialise in the sports side of things, and particularly investment in sport, particularly football. So Gary and I are business partners, so I don't deal so much from the player side, it's more the investment side and growing opportunities. And through Europe we've seen kind of the advancement, I suppose, of academies, youth centres, etc. So a lot of European clubs, a lot of other clubs are looking at other markets to find talent, one of those being America. So Gary and I have consulted for the United Soccer League for many years, and we are responsible for running the European Middle East operation, looking for further investment. There's been a huge amount of interest and investment from American private equity groups, wealthy individuals who have bought minority and majority stakes in UK and other European clubs. And I'd say that change has been relatively recent. We've been involved in a number of those transactions and those deals, and there's a real appetite globally to, you've seen there's a lot of money in Saudi Arabia at the moment, there seems to be a huge appetite for investment in the game in that area. So there's an opportunity, most definitely, I think, as we've discussed, driving some investment into Grenada to help grow the game, and to Eric's point, to help you develop and create a pathway for the players. There's an opportunity to investment, but obviously any investor will be wanting to know exactly what they're investing in, what's the opportunity, what's the potential returns for them, what's the short, medium, long term look like. So strategically it's really quite important, I think, to be clear as to what Grenada FA's medium, long term sort of ambitions are and what they want to achieve.
That's it. And that's really exciting on that side of the market. Obviously, of course, Gary, if you could give us information as to how clubs that are acquired and really structured, of course, the academy system, and your work in the industry as it relates to the business side of developing players and trying to build up the multi-club ownership system as well, which is very prevalent and obviously used a lot. We've seen clubs purchasing, of course, in the City Group. They have clubs even as far as Argentina. Right? So if you can give us some insight into the industry relates to that.
Yes, I think that the multi-club approach is becoming more and more popular because everybody's trying to chase the talent. I think this part of the world is exciting because the athletes that come out of the Caribbean region have got Olympic gold medalists, and the raw talent is there. And I think it won't be long before people try and take advantage to polish some of the raw talent you have. And it's only right you can people discover these players and nurture them as they come through and teach them the fundamentals that you benefit. I was lucky enough to start 2 teams in America, Austin, Texas, then Orlando City. Orlando City was 3 others. Started a brand new club. We joined the United Soccer League, and we went all the way through to MLS. So we started out by bringing players from Haiti and from Cuba, and then we ended up first time we played the MLS, we got a cat card turned out for us, up to 62,500 people. So that journey is amazing. Now, we have to be realistic. You define about the size of your market, and it may be that you have to work closely with other associations to ensure that you have a really good player, that you help them go to the right next opportunity, but you retain a percentage ownership of that player. So when the big move comes, the money comes back into Grenada and use that to further develop the next set of players. And I don't think a lot of people are now looking at these markets like Ireland and Scandinavian countries. I don't think it will long before they come into the Caribbean. It's all about choosing right owners. We know that from experience. And we have to bring a Brazilian investment group into our club in Orlando to be able to build a new soccer-specific stadium, to pay the franchise fee to join MLS. We budgeted to play maybe $40 million to go into MLS. Manchester City bought New York for $100 million, so there's no way you'll get it for that amount of money. So things move on very quickly in football. And I think that there has to be a better way in this part of the world for you to give your players a better platform and a better opportunity. And I think they've got to go away, play in better leagues, come back and cascade that knowledge so that everyone that comes behind them has better pathways. It's all about your direction of travel. And I think that you definitely have to look to give some of us exciting and talents in this country. You've got to give them the best possible chance of success, because that will make people come to good age and start to chase you rather than you chasing them.
Let me just jump in on what they were saying regarding the players moving on and a percentage of the fees coming back to the local clubs. I can give you a typical example. Kenwyn Jones left Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know if you know Kenwyn Jones that eventually played in the English Premier League. Kenwyn Jones left Trinidad and Tobago, played for one of the local clubs, W Connection. I think initially he went on a free transfer, so there was no funds initially for him moving the first time. But then there was a sell-on fee, and there was a percentage in the arrangement with the local club when he moved the first time. They agreed that if he was sold on, they were going to get a percentage, maybe 20%, 15%, whatever it is. And W Connection eventually ended up capitalizing on about £600,000 on Kenwyn Jones, because he made about 2 or 3 major moves to 2 or 3 Premier League clubs in the UK. Each time he made a move, the club in Trinidad got paid a percentage of the move, and then he moved on again for a higher fee. The club again got a percentage of that second move. So I think in the end, W Connection, a local club in Trinidad, would have pocketed somewhere around £600,000 for Kenwyn Jones over the lifespan of his career. It's no different from any Grenadian kid who would have lived here. And something that hasn't come up yet, and I'm sure we're going to touch on it at some point. FIFA has funds built into arrangement with clubs for local teams. The first one is called training and compensation, where just because you would have had this kid from 11, 12, 13, 14, you've been compensated for developing the kid. So even if he's transferred from Queen's Park Rangers to West Ham in the UK, immediately West Ham will be obligated, and FIFA is going to hold them responsible for that training and development fee. I think it's about 5% of the actual transfer. Thereafter, there is what you call solidarity, which is an additional percentage on the transfer that FIFA gives to the local association and the local clubs for that player leaving a place like Grenada or St. Vincent or Dominica and going into the UK. So there is the training and the development, and there is also the solidarity payment. So there's 2 sets of payment that you can get that FIFA will hold the club responsible for, so that your clubs, if a player should leave at 19 or 20, for all the years you would have trained him over that period of time, and it may be 2 clubs. It may be Rangers had him from 13 to 17, and then St. John's Sports had him from 17 to 19 or 20. The 2 clubs will have a percentage of that transfer. So that is something to think about.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, to clarify what Marlon was saying. One is international and one is internal. The money that goes between clubs, the compensation, is normally internal, and the solidarity would be external for transfers that are international, and that is paid as a percentage of the whole transfer fee. So between the age of, I think it's 12 and 15, maybe 16, 15, it's up to 5%. From 16 up to 23, right? Up to 23, it's 10%. So like Marlon says, if the structure is right and you produce an individual and he moves from club to club and he eventually goes from Grenada and he ends up in the MLS or ends up in the English Premier League, there is a payment that will come back to you via FIFA. Now that's up until he's 23. But with compensation is a different thing. The compensation, it's not completely different, don't get me wrong, but it's internal. So if you move from club to club within your own realm, it's internal. One club may have given him, from the age of 12, because it starts at 12, from the age of 12 till he's 15, he moves to maybe a better environment from the age of 15 to 19. That's when the compensations are paid until he signs his first professional football contract. But when he goes abroad, this is where the real money is made. Because you have found a boy at the age of 12, you get your 5%. And he stays there till he's 15. Someone comes along in England and says, well, you know what, this boy can come in on this special thing that the English have got. I might explain that later on. He comes in and he stays at that club until he's 20. All of a sudden then, you get paid from the age of 12 to the age of 15, and from the age of 15, you get 10% up until when he leaves that club. So there's 2 or 3 payments you can get, as Marlon's alluded to there. So there is, I know it doesn't sound right really, selling the players, but there is an income to be earned from investment. But the investment has to start here with the young lads, and that growth will come through your small club into your national team at a certain age, then into your men's senior national team, and then the national team will play on the field with better players that will bring funding to the FA eventually. It's a long process, but it's a process that's there. But it starts at the grassroots.
Any questions on the various clubs as it relates to player development, fee and solidarity payments? This is a very important component. Was the president marked on Kenman Jones? We've had several instances in the Caribbean where players, and to go further with Kenman, even his school, his high school that he played with, received money as well from those deals that transpired. So it's an important aspect, as Eric was saying, to develop young talent, because when the young talent moves on, there is ways of compensation. It's one of the revenues for clubs with players moving on. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an initial first financial transfer. As the player progresses, there is payment set aside by FIFA that comes directly to the club. So to the point of developing and of course harnessing young talent, do here in the Caribbean with the clubs, and hard work with you gentlemen and ladies, but in with your clubs, that is one of the ways that you can generate funds. And of course generate revenue, so it's important that we pay attention on how our young talent is developed on the island, because there is ways and means, of course, for that development to happen. Eric and Gary, I just wanted to segue into this league. A young player from Grenada trying to make his way, as the coin here, pathway on to professional football. What advice would you give to the clubs as it relates to developing players, how to keep track, and what the clubs in Europe and outside of these shows look for, not just the obvious talent, but what other characteristics do they look for in a player?
Sorry. before you move on, because sorry for me listening. I just want to understand how do you access the fund? So how would you call access that fund that player would generate over the period?
Right, well, FIFA have got what they call a passport for each individual player. So you have to report back to FIFA when you had him at your club. So the individual starts at your club because it begins at 12. So the individual starts at your club at 12. If he left the club at 15, say for instance, he's been in your club for 3 years, and he moves internally. He moves to another club. So by the time he's 16 now, that percentage is going to rise when he moves abroad. So he goes 15 from your particular club to someone else's at 16. Someone grabs him in Europe at 16 and says, well, hang on a minute, this guy is a first-year scholar, which is what we call it in England, a first-year scholar. And he becomes a scholar, you sign a 3-year scholar contract, you sign your first pro contract when you're 18, I think they've just changed it. But what happens then is you keep the record of how long you had him. The club who took him from you then documents where they got him from. So then you've got correlation between the two. He keeps him for a year. And someone grabs him in Europe at 16, then the same thing happens again. So FIFA have got a passport of that individual player. So when that player moves abroad or signs his first professional contract in his first move, because where he's moved to 16, he's not necessarily gone abroad as a pro, he's gone abroad as a scholar. But say for instance he moves then to another club within England or outside of England, he's already out of his original realm, then you get paid for solidarity. And everybody down the line gets it. So you get 5% between a certain age, 10% between another age, and you get that up until he's 24 years of age, when he's out of contract, if he's ever out of contract.
And percentage is based on the value
professional? Yes, it's based on the value of the contract fee, the whole contract fee. So if it's 500,000 and you're getting 10% of that because you've had him from the age of 16, you're getting 50,000 for each year that you had him at your club. And you from 12 to 15, you will get 5% of that money. So all of a sudden you had him for 2 years, you are getting 25,000 times 2. You had him for 1 year, you get 50,000 times 1. And that's how it works. And FIFA have done that to just help the people who initially nurtured the player to get something back for the efforts that they put in.
And just to add, with the passport that Eric was alluding to, that is done through the FIFA Connect system, right? So it's very important to make sure that you keep correct documentation, registration of players, etc. It is critical because that's what they use. So everything is done automatically. So it goes into the FIFA Connect. It will look like, say, player A has been at Queen's Park for 3 years, and so when it's calculated, FIFA knows, and the money, FIFA alerts the club that they have to pay these clubs because this is the player passport and this is where the player has been. And that's how the money comes to the clubs, right? It comes directly.
And that money has to be paid within a month, not 6 months, not even
correct.
Within a month.
Sorry, but in addition, FIFA released, I think it was last year, that they have a bulk of funds sitting there from collected from clubs and just waiting for these local clubs around the world to access it or claim it. Because a lot of times clubs around the world are not aware that these funds exist. So a player may go through the system and become, a big transfer in Europe somewhere, and those funds are sitting there because his club in Nigeria or in Argentina is just not aware that he has access to those funds. So FIFA tracks these clubs and tracks these players. As a matter of fact, there's an office in FIFA that tracks these clubs and tracks these players that is aware of the moves of these players. And every time there's a move, they know that this club has to pay. I know in the past there have been some issue with MLS and the Caribbean. A lot of Caribbean players would have wanted the MLS, and the Caribbean clubs have been going after MLS. As a matter of fact, they even took it to FIFA because MLS did not want to pay those compensations. So there's a lot of, for the last 5-6 years, there's a lot of, especially from Trinidad, the former president of Trinidad and Tobago Football Association was adamant that MLS needs to pay for the players living from Trinidad. And there was a lot of back and forth and delays from MLS to pay those compensation. So the compensation exists. A lot of times, I think FIFA announced the last time it was a couple $1 million well just sitting there waiting for clubs to claim. But the bigger picture is, we have to start looking at this football as a business. Not just we come in and we say who wins Premier League, who wins First Division. We need to move away from just winning a competition in Grenada. How do we invest in our clubs to make sure that we have businesses? And these businesses can drive money for you, for the players, for the clubs, for your community. How do we create this business that you pull a kid, because these kids exist. If Kirani James exists in Grenada, there is a footballer in Grenada with the same talent. And we've seen it in the past. We've had players that have played in this country in the past that could probably play anywhere in the world. I have seen it for myself. But in recent times, we've been struggling for players to come through. So how do we, starting with the clubs, how do we build a club in such a way where we have coaches, they've been educated, they have proper programs, and then you're getting players from one level to the next and eventually getting them out. Because if you get one out, that might just change the entire landscape of football in your community, in your parish, and probably in the country. If we could get, Dwight York went to Manchester United from Tobago, and that changed him, his family, and I'm sure the community where he came from. If we can get one player playing in the English Premier League, or 2, or 4, that is bigger than anything else we can do for football in Canada. Because these kids will change their lifestyle. You change it. One time I was traveling on a flight. Jamaica played some Honduras, and Raheem Sterling came for the game, and he came with about 7 of his friends. And these are guys that he grew up with, and they're now working along with him, and he's taking care of everybody. If we have a kid from Victoria or Sotez or St. David somewhere that makes it, the entire village, the entire community changes. So how do we provide for these proper organizations, proper structure that become businesses that can drive funds, drive players, grow players, so that not only are we going to have a good national team, because if we have 10, 15, 20 homegrown players playing abroad, it helps the national team. But also, if you have 10, 15, 20 players playing abroad, it helps our communities, it helps our country economically. Not only that, from a tourism perspective, because if we have 20 players playing all over Europe, every time they're on TV, they're mentioning Grenada. Every time they mention Grenada, someone is sitting in a room in Austria, or Norway, or Sweden, trying to figure out where is this place. And all of a sudden, everybody starts Googling, and all of a sudden, everybody wants to visit this place. So it's not just looking at the football from one side. It's easy to look at the football from, the start of the season is in May, we're going to play a couple games, somebody wins the Premier League, they get a prize money, and then we do it again the next year. We need to change that thinking. How do we put proper time, investment into our small clubs? Because if one club does it, 2 clubs does it, 5 clubs does it, all of a sudden we have proper functioning structured clubs, and then we can get players coming through, and our national team is going to be better, and our community is going to be better.
Can I just say very quickly, 2 things. One, you're right, but even if you have a player at your club for 6 months, please make sure you register with your national association, because the problems with the money decision of FIFA is because clubs have registered players, so they have gaps in their training. So if you register your players with your member association and the rest of the people, you won't have to chase the money will come to you. And even if one of your clubs disappears, the money will still come to Grenada and go to the member association for the benefit of all of you. We have a law firm that specialises in this. We chase trade compensation for clubs all around the world. Quite often we have African clubs, or the clubs down in Central America or the Caribbean. So if you get your registration right, you get your paperwork right, you register your players, the money will come to you. The second thing is, not to hold your value, what know when to let go. So when we started the USL, MLS didn't want to give us any money for our players, so they will do the same down here. They will come and try and take them for nothing. There'll be a time maybe that it's right to do that. You might want your player to go to a better club because the long-term benefit of you financially will be bigger. However, we held firm. We started to sell players our first year in Austin, $100,000. We ended up selling players now for $1.5 million to Benfica from USL, $500,000 to France. You can do that if you reinvest into your players and your coaching and raise your standards. So don't worry about chasing the money.
Right.
It will come to you as long as you get your side right in terms of medicine. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Because my follow-up would have been, do you have to submit a claim?
Yes.
So
You don't have to submit a claim if your registration goes through to be. Historically, it wasn't as good as it is now. Now with the player passport, people are red hot on that.
Just to touch a point that Gary mentioned there about reinvesting, it is all about the coaching of the young players. So initially, as I alluded to, initially you're going to have to invest in the coaches. So it might be an idea to collectively invest in one or maybe two overseas coaches to coach the coaches, if that makes sense. Because then you've got an ethos of football throughout the whole system. And everybody wants to see a nice, stylish game, but some boys don't affect the game with the stylish game. Sometimes you need a bit of brawn, you need a bit of athleticism, and you need people to be able to identify that. And how do you identify that? Well, sometimes you can be taught to identify certain aspects of a man's game, because a football team is a jigsaw puzzle. And the player you see now could be a different player you see somewhere down the line in a different jigsaw puzzle. And this is what the European teams do. They don't come and look for all 11. They come and look for someone like a Patrick Vieira, size, power, a guy who's going to grow into something. And sometimes it's a little bit of luck, but they generally get it right because they're spending money. So this is why Gary's saying, make sure you document how long the individual's been at your particular club, because you might forget about it, but you say, oh, that boy used to play for us, you know, and then you don't realise that you're owed money. And these guys are going to come and get it for you, because it's there. And this is why FIFA have done what they've done, because they've seen it come through the ages that certain clubs have had outstanding young players, and someone's come along and snatched that boy, and someone at the very top is still making money when you guys should be making it, and then you will develop as a group. The GFA will definitely develop, because I've seen it.
Let me just add on to what also Gary said, in terms of knowing when to let go and knowing when to let go or how much you let go at. You know, a lot of times in the Caribbean, you hear a club is interested in a player, and immediately we start thinking dollars. Sometimes a club may come in and say, hey, this kid is unknown, we want to take him on a free transfer. Typical example, there's a kid in Barbados, his name is Thierry Gill. He's about maybe 20 years old now. He's been spending a lot of goals for Barbados in recent times. About 2 years ago, a club came in for him from Hungary. And his local club in Barbados came to me and asked him why they not pay him. The agent at the time had agreed with the club to let him go on a free transfer. And I said to the club at the time, the local club, the same thing that Gary said. Sometimes you have to let go and get the money later on, rather than take it now. Because if they are trying to take it now, the club wasn't going to be interested. He's an unknown kid, he just came from the U20 national team, he's going to Europe, and they say, we're taking a gamble. We don't know if he's going to do well. He's doing well in Barbados as a youth player. We don't know what he's going to do when he gets to Europe. So, I was able to convince them to let him go. He went to Hungary. He's made 2 moves since. I think right now he's probably in Australia, maybe. Matter of fact, his agent was here. Who's the agent? The guy that was here. The agent was at the game against Jamaica a couple nights ago, and he told me he just moved him again, I think, to Australia. So since then, he was Hungary for free transfer, and since then he's made 2 bigger money moves. And then his 3rd club now. So I'm certain compensation for that club who didn't get initially. But now, after the first move, there would have been some, because what I advised them was to make sure in the transfer there is that sell-on fee. So if he sells on, you get a percentage. I'm not sure what number they came on, if it's at 20%, 15%, wherever they came on. But there was, I'm certain they would have put in a sell-on fee, and in that case, that club would have benefited from the first transfer, and then again on the second transfer. If he moves again, because he's playing well, he's developing well, he's adjusted to Europe, and whenever the last 4 or 5 games Barbados has played, he's been the top goal scorer. I think he's probably scored over 3 or 4 goals in Nations League so far. So once he continues to develop, he's going to keep moving. Every time he moves, there's more money for the local club on the ground. And it's an amateur club in Barbados that had him as a kid from the academy all the way up to, I think he left Barbados at 18. So they would have been able to get compensation for that 6 years or whatever it is that he was at the club.
The other thing to say is that Nick and I were in America for the last week, talking to leagues, talking to clubs, and one of the conversations with a club that you play for, I've got a good young player, he's just been in the American Guardian list of best players who have played for the States. They're actually being quite brave. Instead of taking $1.5 million short of them and then taking 15% sell-off, they're saying you can have this player for $500,000, but we want 50% sell-off, because they believe he's got a big trajectory. He's just 18. They think they can have a number of years of making really big money. So that's a brave decision to take, because most people just want the cash up front and take a smaller sell-on. But I like the way they think, because there are lots of, we worked with Atlanta United, but they started because we started like this, we asked us to help them. And they went to bought Armour on for $10 million, it seemed like a lot of money. But the club didn't have much on sell. When he went for 20 odd million to Newcastle United, I don't think it's not that big a sell. Yeah. So you've got to back yourself sometimes. No one knows the players like you do. If you think they've got the mentality and the athleticism to keep growing and they're going to get better, then take a little bit of a gamble. But it's easy to say that when you've got cash and you clubs will struggle every day. I'm sure to get balls and kids. You make student worry, I get that. We've been there when we started clubs, small clubs and under 23 teams. But I think you're only as good as your coaches and the players that you've got.
It does start from the coaches. And the coaches nurture the kids. You keep the kids in the right environment, and that's when you monetize them. And then you help the kids by giving yourself, well, sometimes it's a gamble, as Gary just said, it's a gamble. But not many clubs want to gamble on the longer term, because they need the funds now to keep the everyday going. So it's a difficult situation, but sometimes you take good advice from people around you, maybe your agent, because you might have an agent who works with you at a particular club. I'm just thinking, there's the guy you was talking about, I think, is that Curtis something? Yeah? Curtis Dawes. Curtis Dawes. I was sitting there, I was thinking, I saw Curtis Dawes. Yeah, he's an English agent, who I've seen, and he's working abroad, and he's got it right, because he's taken a gamble on certain individuals, and he's waiting on his money, but he knows he's going to get it, because he's taking a calculated gamble. So make sure when you nurture these boys,